again, math students. We are going to keep doing some factoring like we did in the last lesson, but today, instead of always having the same signs, we've got a little bit different situation. So let's start the same way that we did yesterday. Let's review FOILing so that we can use that when we do our factoring. When we FOIL this, we'll have x times x, that's x squared. X times 5 is 5x. Negative 3 times x is going to be a negative 3x. And then negative 3 times 5 is going to be a negative 15. And then again, these middle terms match. So I'll get x squared plus 2x minus 15. So let's take a look at some of those numbers. Where did the negative 15 come from? Right, that came from, let me cover up what we don't need for a minute here. The negative 15 came from multiplying negative 3 times positive 5. And it's negative because they're different signs, right? If they were the same signs, we would get a positive 15. If they're different signs, I don't care which one's bigger or smaller. If they're different signs when I multiply, I'm going to get a negative number. Now, where did the 2 come from? And it's a positive 2, right? We want to make sure that we see that also. The 2 came from when I would add the negative 3 and the positive 5. And the reason it's positive is because there were more positives, right? So for the 15, I didn't care which one was more. I just cared that they were different signs. That's why I got a negative. But when I add in that middle term, because there were more positives, because the 5 is bigger, I get a positive middle term. Now let's take a look at the second problem. X times x is x squared. X times a negative 10 is a negative 10x. 7 times x is a positive 7x. And then 7 times a negative 10 is a negative 70. So again, these middle terms match. I'll get x squared minus 3x minus 70. So different signs than what I had in the first problem. In this case, the middle term ended up being negative, but in both of them, that last term was negative. So that matched. So the negative 70, that came from 7 times negative 10, right? That was positive 7 times negative 10. That's where this number came from. And it's negative because they were different signs. The negative 3 came from when I added the positive 7 and the negative 10. And this time, it's negative because there were more negatives. The 10 was the bigger number. So there's more negatives in this one. So today when we're doing these problems, yeah, we're adding those middle terms together, but they're always going to be different signs today. And if they're different signs, really what happens is we're going to end up subtracting those in our head, and then we take the sign from the bigger number. So when we're looking at these problems today, every single problem that we start today will have a negative right here. And that's because we're going to be factoring these, and they'll all have different signs. So one will be positive, one will be a negative. Then we look at this sign to see, are there more positives or more negatives, to know where the bigger number goes. If the bigger number goes with the addition or with the subtraction, as a positive or a negative number. So here is just kind of the general, this is what we're looking at. And I know that in this it says x squared plus bx plus c, but they're saying, oh yeah, the c is negative. I kind of wish they would have just had this as a subtraction right here, but they're saying if that number is negative, like they have in the example, that means I had to have different signs because they're multiplying to be that number. So instead of multiplying to be the last number and adding to be the middle number, today, even though we really are adding, since they're different signs, I want you to be thinking more about a subtraction kind of a problem. So you can see this example problem is done for you. I know that the answer is right there, but here's how I would start it. I always start with my parentheses, and I start kind of building the problem with my x's in there. This tells me that they're different signs. I don't care if you decide first or second, you know, where your plus sign is going to go, where your minus sign is going to go. My method, the way that I like to do this is, if I know they're going to be different signs, I'll just put the first one as a plus and the second one as a minus. You don't have to have it in that order. But that way I know that I've got different signs. So I need numbers that multiply to be 5. It's kind of nice because there's only 2 numbers that multiply to be 5, 1 and 5. And then I can decide, since they're different signs, I'm going to be subtracting. So I've got 5 and 1 I have to subtract, but I need more negatives. So the bigger number goes with the negative, or the subtraction, and the 1, the smaller number, goes with the addition. So in these two problems, you can see the third term, both of them, is subtraction. So we're going to have 2 sets of parentheses. Again, we're just kind of building up our stuff here. This tells me they're different signs. I'm multiplying it, I get a negative 16, so I'll have one number that's going to be positive and one number that's going to be negative. I need numbers that multiply to be 16. And then because they're different signs, they really subtract to be 6. So you could make a big list of numbers that multiply to be 16 if you want to. 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. And then I would say, well, which of these pairs would subtract to be 6? And that's going to be this. Since I have more positives, since this middle section ends up as a positive, I want my bigger number, my 8, to go with the positive, and the smaller one goes with the negative. And if you want to check any of these, just like in the last lesson, go ahead and FOIL it. Again, that's x squared. Got it. That's a negative 2x, and this is a positive 8x. Positive 8 and negative 2, that does give me 6x. And then 8 times a negative 2 is negative 16. Let's factor this one. Again, 2 sets of parentheses. Let's get our x's in here. By the way, the parentheses are necessary. You can't just skip them. You can't skip the x's. You can't just find the 2 numbers and just write the 2 numbers. Like in this last problem, you couldn't just say 8 and negative 2. We're not solving. We are factoring. We need to see those binomial factors. Again, since this is a negative, as it will be all day today, I need 1 positive and 1 negative. 7 again is nice. As a prime number, the only numbers that multiply to be 7 are 1 and 7. This middle term tells me I've got more negatives. So the bigger number, the 7, has to go with the subtraction. And then the smaller number goes with the addition. Check it with FOILing if you're not sure. So in these problems that we want to factor, different signs. By the way, when I ask about if they're the same signs or different signs or anything, I'm not looking at like, can you notice that the plus and the minus don't match in the problem? I'm saying I multiplied and I got a negative 4. That means that the signs in my factors, in my binomials, have to be different. 4, again, not a whole lot of options. 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. This is going to be 1 and 4, and then I need my numbers to subtract to be 3. That's why I picked the 1 and 4. And I need more positives. So the 4 goes here, the 1 goes there. For this problem, one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative because I multiplied and got a negative 14. 14 also, not a ton of factors. We're trying to pick numbers that don't have a whole lot of factors. So 1 and 14 are 2 and 7. 2 and 7 is going to be the one that subtracts to give me my 5. I've got more negatives, so the big number goes here, smaller number goes here. That's all. 36, now we have more factors. We do know that it's going to be a negative, or a plus and a minus, different signs because of that negative. Numbers that multiply to be 36. And again, feel free to make a list if you need to. I have a feeling some of you already know these numbers in your head, but 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, 6 times 6. We have a lot of options here, but I need numbers that I can subtract and get 5. That's that pair. And I have more negatives, which mean the 9 would be with the negative, and the 4 is going to be with the positive. signs. Multiplies to be 9, subtracts to be 8. Well, that's going to have to be 9 and 1. A lot of people forget about using 1 as a factor, but 9 and 1, or 3 and 3, 3 and 3 aren't going to subtract to give me 8. 9 and 1 will, though. And I've got a positive for my middle term, so the big number goes here, small number goes with the subtraction. And just some more problems to just keep practicing this. Numbers that multiply to be 15 and subtract to be 2. By the way, if you want to, you could pause right now, see if you can do both of these problems, and then check it once you start the video again. 15 is going to have to be 3 and 5, and because I've got a positive 2, that means that the 5, the bigger number goes here, smaller number goes with the subtraction. Now in this case, I've got more negatives. So when I subtract, I know that I'm going to have to put my bigger number then with the negative. Multiplies to be 45. So again, we do have some options here, but this is going to be 9 and 5. 9 times 5 is 45, and 9 minus 5 is 4. And because it's a negative 4 for that middle term, 9 goes here, and 5 goes here. These problems are really nice if you're pretty good with your multiplication facts. If you're struggling with that a little bit, feel free to have your multiplication table out from your planner. That might help you if you need it. So here we've got y's instead of x's, no big deal. This tells me different signs, so one's plus and one's minus. Numbers that multiply to be 30 and subtract to be 13. I'm going to tell you right now, a whole bunch of people are probably thinking 10 and 3. But those don't subtract to be 13. They add to be 13. So what other numbers could multiply to be 30 besides 3 and 10? How about 15 and 2? 15 minus 2 would be 13, and I need more positives, so I'm going to put my big number here, smaller number there. And for this last problem, this one throws a little bit, it throws some people off a little bit because I don't see a number in front of that middle term. Remember, that's really a negative 1 right there. So because I've got a negative 42, I know there'll be different signs. 42 does have several factors, but again, I think the one that's the most common for people to think of is 6 and 7. 6 and 7 do subtract to be 1. I've got more negatives, so the 7 has to go with the negative, and the 6 is going to go with the positive. So today's worksheet is factoring. All of them are going to be multiplying to get, and you get a different sign in your factors. So you'll have one that's an x plus and one that's an x minus, or whatever variable you happen to be using. Check it with the answer key in Schoology, and then take the formative. And if you need any help, let me know.